Margaret Chen's hands didn't shake as she signed the new will. They'd shaken plenty over the years, arthritis, age, the weight of 78 years of living, but not now, not when it mattered most. The pen moved across the paper with steady purpose, her signature as firm as it had been 40 years ago when she'd signed the business contracts that built the fortune her daughter was about to lose. James Park, her attorney of 32 years, watched from across his mahogany desk. He'd known Margaret since before Linda was born. He'd drawn up the original will when her husband Thomas died 15 years ago. And now, on the evening of her 78th birthday, he was witnessing her rewrite it completely. "Are you certain about this, Margaret?" His voice was gentle, but his eyes were serious. This wasn't a small change. This was nuclear. Margaret set down the pen and looked at him. Her face was calm. No tears, no anger, just a clarity that came from finally seeing the truth she'd been avoiding for years. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." 12 hours earlier, Margaret had woken up in her own bed for the last time. She didn't know that then. She'd opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through the curtains of the bedroom she'd shared with Thomas for 43 years. The house was quiet, too quiet, but it had been quiet for a long time now. Ever since Linda stopped visiting unless she needed something. It was her birthday, 78 years old. She'd thought maybe today would be different. Maybe Linda would come by. Maybe they'd have breakfast together like they used to, back when Linda still seemed to enjoy her company. Maybe the grandchildren would call. She'd made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, her phone beside her plate. The clock on the wall ticked past 8 o'clock, past 9, past 10. The phone stayed silent. At 10:30, she heard a car in the driveway. Her heart lifted. Linda had come after all. Maybe she'd just been running late. Maybe she'd bring Emma and Michael. Maybe. The door opened without a knock. Linda had a key, of course. She'd insisted on it 2 years ago. In case of emergency. Margaret heard her daughter's heels clicking on the hardwood floor, heard her talking to someone. Robert's voice answered. Her son-in-law. They were both here. Margaret stood up, smoothing her sweater. She'd dressed nicely this morning, just in case. Linda appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was wearing her work clothes, expensive suit, designer bag, the look of someone who had places to be, and this wasn't one of them. Robert stood behind her, his face carefully neutral. "Mom, good, you're up. We need to talk." Not happy birthday, not how are you feeling, just business. Margaret felt something cold settle in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Would you like some coffee? We don't have time." Linda set her bag on the counter with a thud. "I've been trying to talk to you about this for months, but you keep avoiding the conversation. It's not safe for you to live alone anymore." "I'm fine here. I've been managing perfectly well." "Mom, you're 78 years old. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" Linda's voice had that edge it got when she was annoyed at having to explain herself. "Robert and I have been looking into options, and we found a place. Sunny Meadows. It's very nice. They have activities, nurses on staff, everything you need." Margaret's hands tightened on the back of the kitchen chair. "A nursing home?" "An assisted living facility," Robert corrected, his tone soothing in that way that made it clear he thought she was being difficult. "Very different, much more independent. I don't need assisted living. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself." "That's what you say now." Linda pulled out her phone, not looking at her mother. "But what about when you're not? What about when you can't? We can't drop everything every time you need help. We have our own lives, Mom. Jobs, responsibilities. Emma's applying to graduate schools. Michael just started his new position. We can't be running over here constantly." "I haven't asked you to run over here at all," Margaret said quietly. "You haven't visited in 3 months." Linda's jaw tightened. "Because every time I do, You guilt-trip me about not coming enough. It's exhausting." The words hung in the air. Margaret felt them settle into her bones, cold and heavy. On her birthday. Her daughter thought visiting her was exhausting. "We've already put down a deposit," Robert said, stepping forward. "The room is ready. We thought it would be easier to just make the transition today, get it over with." "Today?" Margaret's voice came out smaller than she intended. "On my birthday?" Linda finally looked up from her phone. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance at being made to feel guilty. "We didn't plan it that way. The room just became available. These places have waiting lists, Mom. We were lucky to get in." "I packed some of your things." Linda gestured toward the front door, where Margaret now noticed 2 suitcases sitting. Her suitcases? Linda had been in her bedroom, had gone through her things, had packed for her like she was a child being sent to camp. "I don't want to go." "Mom?" Linda's voice took on that patient but firm tone she probably used with difficult clients. "This isn't a discussion. The decision is made. You're going to Sunny Meadows. Today. Now. We have the car outside." Margaret looked at her daughter, really looked at her, at the impatience in her eyes, the way she kept glancing at her watch, the complete absence of warmth or affection or any acknowledgement that today was supposed to be special. "Did you even remember it's my birthday?" Linda blinked. For a second, genuine surprise crossed her face. Then she recovered. "Of course I remembered. I've been busy, Mom. I was going to call later." The lie was so casual, so easy. Margaret wondered how many other lies she'd accepted over the years, how many times she'd made excuses for her daughter's absence, her coldness, her slow transformation from the little girl who used to climb into Margaret's lap to the woman who couldn't spare an hour on her mother's birthday. "I need to think about this," Margaret said. "Give me a few days." "We don't have a few days. The room is ready now. If we don't take it, they'll give it to someone else." Linda picked up her bag. "Come on, Mom. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Margaret stood in her kitchen, the kitchen where she'd made breakfast for Linda every morning for 18 years, where she'd helped with homework and dried tears and celebrated every achievement, and felt something inside her shift. Not break, shift, like a door closing, like a decision being made without her conscious thought. "Fine." Linda looked surprised. "Fine? I'll go." Margaret's voice was calm. Too calm, maybe, but Linda didn't seem to notice. "Let me just get my purse." Relief flooded Linda's face. "Great. That's great, Mom. You'll see. This is going to be so much better. You'll have people around, activities. You won't be lonely anymore." Margaret walked past her daughter without responding. She went to her bedroom. The room Linda had invaded had packed up like Margaret's life was something that could fit in 2 suitcases, and picked up her purse, her phone, her address book, the photo of Thomas she kept on the nightstand. She looked around the room one more time. 43 years of marriage, 15 years of widowhood, all the mornings waking up, all the nights going to sleep, all the memories these walls held. And her daughter couldn't wait one more day. Couldn't even pretend to care that it was her birthday. The drive to Sunny Meadows took 20 minutes. Linda talked the whole way, her voice bright and determined, selling Margaret on a decision that had already been made without her. Robert drove in silence. Margaret sat in the back seat, watching her neighborhood disappear. The park where she walked every morning. The library where she volunteered on Tuesdays. The grocery store where everyone knew her name. Sunny Meadows was nicer than she'd expected. That almost made it worse. Clean hallways, cheerful artwork, nurses with kind faces who clearly had no idea that the elderly woman being checked in hadn't chosen to be there. That she'd been delivered like a package no one wanted to keep. Linda handled the paperwork while Robert brought in the suitcases. Margaret sat in a chair in the lobby and watched families come and go. Some visitors looked happy to be there. Others looked guilty. A few looked relieved, the way Linda had looked when Margaret agreed to come without a fight. All set. Linda appeared with a folder of papers and a bright smile that didn't reach. Her eyes. "Your room is 247, second floor. They're going to get you settled in, and then there's a welcome orientation at 4. I left my number at the desk, and they'll call if there are any issues." "You're leaving?" The words came out before Margaret could stop them. "Mom, I told you, I have a meeting at 2. I'm already going to be late." Linda glanced at her watch again. Always the watch, always somewhere else to be. "But I'll call you tomorrow, okay? See how you're settling in." She wouldn't call tomorrow. Margaret knew that suddenly, with perfect clarity. Linda would mean to call. She'd probably even feel guilty about not calling. But something would come up. Something always did. And days would turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and Margaret would sit in room 247 waiting for a phone call that never came. Linda bent down and kissed Margaret's cheek. Quick, perfunctory. The kind of kiss you give someone because you're supposed to, not because you want to. "Love you, Mom? This is for the best. You'll see." And then she was gone, heels clicking across the lobby, Robert following behind her, the automatic doors sliding open and closed, the sound of their car starting, driving away. Margaret sat in the chair and felt 78 years of trying to be a good mother, a good person, a woman who put family first, crystallize into a single, perfect moment of understanding. Her daughter had put her in a nursing home on her birthday. Without asking, without caring, without even remembering what day it was until Margaret reminded her, and Linda thought she was going to inherit $4 million. A nurse appeared beside her, young, Latina, kind eyes. Her name tag said, "Rosa? Mrs. Chen? I'm going to show you to your room, help you get settled in." Margaret stood up. Her legs were steady. Her mind was clear. "Thank you, Rosa. But first, I need to make a phone call." "Of course. There's a phone in your room, or you can use your cell. I need privacy, and I need to call my attorney." Something in Margaret's voice made Rosa pause. She studied Margaret's face for a moment, and whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. "There's a small office on this floor for family meetings. It's empty right now. I can show you there." "That would be perfect." Rosa led her down a hallway to a small room with a desk and 2 chairs. "Take all the time you need." Margaret waited until the door closed. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd known by heart for 32 years. "James Park's office." "This is Margaret Chen. I need to speak with James. It's urgent." There was a pause. "Mrs. Chen, Mr. Park is with a client. Can I have him call you back?" "Tell him it's Margaret. Tell him I need to change my will. Tell him it can't wait." Another pause. Longer this time. "Hold, please." 60 seconds later, James's voice came on the line. Concerned. Alert. "Margaret, what's happened?" "Linda put me in a nursing home. Today. On my birthday. She didn't ask. She just decided. Packed my things and brought me here like I'm a piece of furniture she's storing." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "I'm sorry, Margaret. I want to change my will. I want to do it today. Now. Can you come here?" "Margaret, you're upset. Maybe we should wait a few days. Let you think about this." "I've been thinking about it for years, James. I've been making excuses for her, telling myself she's busy, that she loves me even if she doesn't show it. That family is family." Margaret's voice was steady, certain. "But today, on my 78th birthday, my only daughter couldn't even remember what day it was. She put me here because I'm inconvenient, because she's too busy for me. And I know exactly why she's been asking about my estate planning, why she's suddenly so concerned about my well-being. She wants to make sure she inherits. She wants to make sure she inherits, and I'm done pretending I don't see it. James was quiet for a long moment. "I can be there in an hour. But Margaret, once we do this, there's no taking it back easily. If you change your mind later—" "I won't change my mind. I've spent 78 years putting other people first. Today I'm putting myself first. Can you come or not?" "I'll be there in 45 minutes." Margaret hung up and sat in the small office, her hands folded in her lap. She felt calm, calmer than she had in years, like a weight she'd been carrying had finally been set down. The truth was, this had been building for a long time. Years, really. She'd just been too afraid to see it, too afraid to admit that the daughter she'd raised, the little girl she'd loved so fiercely, had grown into someone who saw her as an obligation, a burden, a bank account waiting to be claimed. It had started small. Linda canceling plans at the last minute, forgetting to call on holidays, making excuses about why she couldn't visit. Margaret had understood. Linda had a career, a family, responsibilities. Margaret herself had been busy when Linda was young. She'd tried to balance work and motherhood, and she hadn't always gotten it right. But she'd tried. She'd shown up. She'd been there. When had Linda stopped being there? Margaret thought back over the past 5 years since Thomas died. Linda had been helpful at first, organizing the funeral, dealing with the estate. But once the immediate crisis passed, the visits had become less frequent, the phone calls shorter, the excuses more elaborate. And then, about 2 years ago, Linda had started asking questions about Margaret's finances, about her estate planning, about who would get what when she was gone. Casual questions, framed as concern. "Just want to make sure everything's in order, Mom. You know, in case anything happens." Margaret had updated her will then, left everything to Linda. It seemed natural. Linda was her only child. Emma and Michael were her only grandchildren. Who else would she leave it to? $4 million. The house, paid off and worth nearly $1 million in today's market. The investment accounts Thomas had built and Margaret had carefully managed. The life insurance, the savings. A lifetime of work and careful planning. Linda knew about the money. Margaret had told her, thinking it would give her daughter peace of mind. Security. Instead, it seemed to have given Linda permission to stop pretending. The visits had dropped off even more after that. Linda was always busy, always stressed, always needing something, a loan for Emma's tuition, help with Michael's car, money for a kitchen renovation. Margaret had helped. Of course she'd helped. That's what mothers did. But Linda never paid her back, never even offered. And when Margaret had gently suggested that maybe it was time to start repaying some of the loans, Linda had gotten defensive. "I thought you wanted to help us, Mom. I thought family helped each other. Or is this about the money? Are you going to hold it over my head now?" Margaret had backed down, apologized, told herself it didn't matter. What was money compared to family? But apparently family didn't matter at all, not to Linda. The door opened. Rosa poked her head in. "Mrs. Chen, your attorney is here." Margaret stood up. "Thank you. Please show him in." James entered carrying his briefcase. He looked at Margaret carefully, searching her face for signs of doubt or confusion. He wouldn't find any. "You're sure about this?" "Completely sure." He sat down across from her and opened his briefcase. "All right, let's talk about what you want to do." "I want Linda to get nothing. Not the house, not the investments, not a single dollar." James nodded slowly. "That's your right, but you should know she could contest the will, claim undue influence, diminished capacity." "Let her try." Margaret's voice was sharp. "I'm 78, James, not senile. I volunteer at the library. I manage my own finances. I have a better memory than people half my age. Any doctor will testify that I'm of sound mind." "I know that, but courts can be unpredictable, especially when adult children are cut out completely. It might be easier to leave her something small, a token, enough that it's clear you didn't forget her, but not what she's expecting." Margaret considered this. "What do you suggest?" $5,000, and a letter explaining why. A letter? Yes, attached to the will, not legally binding, but it shows your reasoning, shows you made this decision carefully, not impulsively. It makes the will much harder to contest. Margaret thought about this. A letter to Linda, one last communication, one last chance to say what needed to be said. All right, $5,000 and a letter. What about the rest? That's up to you, Charity, other family members, friends. Margaret had been thinking about this during the drive over, during the walk through Sunny Meadows, during the phone call to James. She'd been thinking about who in her life had actually shown up, who had cared, who had treated her like a person instead of an inconvenience. I want to set up a trust for Emma and Michael. They get it when they turn 30, not before. And only if they've maintained a relationship with me. Real visits, real phone calls, not just showing up when they want money. James made notes. I can structure that. What else? The house. I want it to go to Rosa. James looked up, surprised. Rosa? The nurse who showed me to this room. She's been here less than an hour, and she's shown me more kindness than my daughter has in 5 years. Margaret, you just met her. I know, but I've been watching people my whole life, James. I know kindness when I see it, and I know what it's like to be invisible. Margaret's voice softened. Rosa saw me, not as a patient, not as a burden, as a person. That's worth something. It's $1 million house. I know what it's worth. I want her to have it. James studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. What about the investments? Split them. Half to the library where I volunteer. They've been trying to fund a new children's wing for years. The other half to a scholarship fund for nursing students, people like Rosa who actually care about taking care of the elderly. And the life insurance? Margaret smiled. It was a cold smile, a smile that came from 78 years of learning exactly how the world worked. Leave that to Linda, the $5,000 plus the life insurance, $50,000 total. Enough that she can't say I left her nothing. Not enough to be what she was expecting. James wrote it all down. Then he looked up at her. This is going to devastate her. Good, maybe it will teach her something. Margaret. She put me in a nursing home on my birthday, James, without asking, without caring, because I was inconvenient, because she has more important things to do. Margaret's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. She doesn't get to be devastated. She doesn't get to play the victim. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. James nodded slowly. All right, let me draft this up. It'll take about 30 minutes. He worked in silence, his pen moving across legal paper, translating Margaret's decisions into binding law. Margaret sat and watched him, feeling the weight of what she was doing. This would destroy her relationship with Linda. What was left of it anyway? But maybe there was nothing left to destroy. Maybe it had been dying for years, and Margaret had just been too afraid to let it go. Too afraid to admit that her daughter didn't love her the way she'd loved her daughter. That was the hardest part. Not the anger, not the betrayal, the grief, the loss of something that maybe had never really existed, the fantasy of a daughter who cared, who would visit, who would call, who would remember her mother's birthday. Done. James turned the papers toward her. Read through this carefully. Make sure it's what you want. Margaret read every word. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. Linda would get $55,000 total. Emma and Michael would get their trust funds, contingent on maintaining a relationship with their grandmother. Rosa would get the house. The library and the nursing scholarship would split the investments. Everything else, the furniture, the personal items, the jewelry Thomas had given her, would be sold, and the proceeds donated to organizations that helped elderly people living in poverty. Linda would get almost nothing, and she would know exactly why. It's perfect. Sign here, and initial here. Margaret signed. Her hands were steady. Her signature was firm. James witnessed it, then called in 2 nurses from the hallway to serve as additional witnesses. They signed without asking questions, their faces professionally neutral. Done. James gathered the papers and put them in his briefcase. I'll file this tomorrow. It's legally binding as of right now. Thank you, James. He stood up, but didn't leave immediately. Margaret, I've known you for over 30 years. I've never seen you act out of spite or cruelty, but I need to ask, are you doing this for the right reasons, or are you just hurt and angry? Margaret considered the question. It was fair. She was hurt. She was angry. But that wasn't why she was doing this. I'm doing this because I deserve better than how she's treated me. Because I spent 78 years being kind and generous and putting other people first. And where did it get me? In a nursing home on my birthday, abandoned by the one person who should have loved me most. She looked at James. I'm doing this because it's the truth. Linda doesn't love me. She loves my money. And I'd rather give it to people who will use it to do good in the world than to someone who sees me as nothing but an inconvenience. James nodded. Then I think you're doing the right thing. After he left, Margaret sat alone in the small office. The sun was setting outside the window, casting long shadows across the floor. Somewhere in the building, she could hear the sounds of dinner being served, trays rattling, voices calling out, the ordinary sounds of institutional life. This was her home now. Room 247, Sunny Meadows, assisted living. Not because she needed assistance, not because she couldn't take care of herself, but because her daughter had decided it was easier to put her here than to deal with her. Margaret stood up and walked to her room. Rosa was there, unpacking the suitcases Linda had packed. She looked up when Margaret entered. I wasn't sure where you'd want things, so I just started with the basics. That's fine, thank you. Rosa studied her face. Are you okay, Mrs. Chen? I will be. Your daughter, the one who dropped you off, she seemed in a hurry. She always is, Rosa nodded slowly. I've worked here for 8 years. I've seen a lot of families, a lot of different ways people treat their elderly parents. She hesitated, then continued. Some people visit every day. Some people never visit at all. And some people visit just often enough to feel like they're doing their duty. Which kind is Linda? I don't know yet, but I know what kind you are. What kind is that? The kind who deserves better. Margaret felt something in her chest tighten. This stranger, this nurse she'd known for less than 2 hours, had seen her more clearly than her own daughter had in years. Thank you, Rosa. For what? For seeing me. Rosa smiled. That's my job, but it's also just being human. She finished unpacking the last suitcase. Dinner's in 30 minutes. Can I show you to the dining room? I'd like that. Margaret followed Rosa down the hallway. Other residents were emerging from their rooms, some walking, some in wheelchairs, some with walkers. They greeted each other with the easy familiarity of people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and decided to make the best of it. The dining room was bright and clean, round tables with tablecloths. Real plates, not disposable. It could have been worse, it could have been much worse, but it shouldn't have been at all. Margaret sat down at a table near the window. An elderly man with kind eyes and a Red Sox cap nodded to her. New arrival? Today? Birthday present from the family? Margaret blinked. How did you know? He smiled sadly. Because that's when they usually do it. Birthdays, holidays, times when they feel guilty enough to take action, but not guilty enough to actually change their behavior. He held out his hand. Frank Morrison, been here 3 years. Margaret Chen, been here 3 hours. It gets easier, or you get used to it. I'm not sure which. Dinner arrived. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes, green beans. Not bad, actually. Margaret ate slowly, listening to the conversations around her. Frank told stories about his grandchildren. A woman named Helen talked about the book club meeting on Thursday. Another man named George complained about the Red Sox's pitching. Normal conversation, normal life, just transplanted to a place none of them had chosen to be. After dinner, Margaret returned to her room. She sat in the chair by the window and looked out at the parking lot. Cars coming and going, visitors arriving, visitors leaving. Her phone rang. For a moment, her heart jumped. Maybe Linda had realized what day it was. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe. But it wasn't Linda. It was Emma, her granddaughter. "Hi, Grandma. Mom told me about the move. How are you settling in?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "Good. Busy with applications. Mom said you're at Sunny Meadows now?" "Yes." "That's probably for the best. You know, with you getting older and everything, it's safer." Emma's voice was bright and casual. She believed what Linda had told her, that this was for Margaret's own good, that it was the right decision. "Emma, did you know today is my birthday?" A pause. Oh my God, Grandma, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. With everything going on." "It's all right." "No, it's not. I should have remembered. I'll send you a card. Or flowers. Or—" "Emma, when was the last time you visited me?" Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know. A few months ago?" 8 months. You came by in March because you needed help with your resume." "I've been really busy, Grandma. School and applications and—" "I know. Everyone's busy." Margaret's voice was gentle, not accusing, just stating a fact. "But I want you to think about something. When you're my age, when you're 78 years old, what do you think you'll remember? The meetings you attended? The applications you filled out? Or the people who loved you?" "Grandma, I'm not angry with you, sweetheart, but I want you to understand something. Time is the most valuable thing we have, and how we choose to spend it shows what we really value." Emma was quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Are you okay, Grandma?" "I'm fine. I'm just thinking about what matters and what doesn't." They talked for a few more minutes, but the conversation felt hollow. Emma promised to visit soon. Margaret didn't believe her. Not because Emma was lying, but because Emma was young. Because soon meant something different when you were 25 than when you were 78. After she hung up, Margaret sat in the growing darkness. She didn't turn on the light. She just sat and thought about the will she'd signed, about the choices she'd made, about the life she'd lived and the life she had left. She thought about Thomas, what he would say if he could see her now. He'd been a good man, a kind man. He'd built a successful business through hard work and integrity. He'd loved her fiercely, even when she was difficult, even when she was scared. He'd died too soon, 63 years old, heart attack. One moment he was laughing at something on TV. The next, he was gone. 15 years ago, but it still felt like yesterday. What would he think of Linda now, of the daughter they'd raised together? Would he be disappointed? Would he be angry? Or would he understand somehow that people become who they become, and parents can only do so much? Margaret's phone buzzed, a text from Linda. "Hope you're settling in okay. Talk soon." Not happy birthday, not I love you, not even I'm sorry, just talk soon. A promise that probably wouldn't be kept, a gesture that cost nothing and meant less. Margaret deleted the text and turned off her phone. The next morning she woke up in room 247 and lay in bed for a moment, orienting herself. This was her life now, this room, this place, this new reality. But it didn't have to be a sad reality. It could be whatever she made it. She got up, showered, dressed, went to breakfast. Frank waved her over to his table. Sleep okay? Well enough. Give it a week. Either you'll adjust or you'll go crazy. Most people adjust. What about you? I adjusted. Didn't have much choice. My daughter lives in California. My son lives in Texas. I lived in Boston. None of them wanted to uproot their lives to take care of me, and I didn't want to uproot mine to move near them. He shrugged. So here I am. It's not home, but it's not prison either. Do they visit? Holidays, sometimes. They mean well. Life just gets in the way. Margaret nodded. She understood. Life got in the way. Work got in the way. Busy got in the way. Everything got in the way except the thing that should have mattered most. After breakfast, she explored the facility. There was a library, small but well-stocked, a craft room, a garden, a common area with a TV and comfortable chairs. It was nice, nicer than many places. But it was still an institution, still a place where people were sent when they became inconvenient. Rosa found her in the garden. "Mrs. Chen, you have a visitor." Margaret's heart sank. Linda? It had to be Linda, coming to check on her, coming to assuage her guilt, coming to make sure Margaret was settling in so she could go back to her busy life without worry. But it wasn't Linda. It was James Park. "I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to check on you. Make sure you were all right." "I'm fine. Come, sit." They sat on a bench in the garden. The sun was warm. Birds were singing. It was almost peaceful. "I filed the will this morning. It's official." "Good. Margaret, have you thought about what happens when Linda finds out?" "She'll find out when I die, not before." "She might ask to see the will." "People do sometimes, especially when they're expecting a large inheritance." "Then she'll see it. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just not announcing it." James nodded. "There's something else. I did some research last night. Legally, Linda can't force you to stay here. You're of sound mind. You have the financial means to live independently. If you want to leave, you can." Margaret looked at him. "You think I should leave?" "I think you should do whatever makes you happy. But I don't think you should stay here just because Linda decided you should." Margaret thought about this. He was right. She could leave. She could go home, back to her house, her life, her independence. But did she want to? The house was empty. Thomas was gone. Linda never visited. The grandchildren were busy. What would she be going home to? Loneliness in a bigger space? "I'll think about it." "That's all I ask." James stood up. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." After he left, Margaret sat in the garden and thought about what she wanted. Really wanted. Not what Linda wanted, not what society expected. What she, Margaret Chen, 78 years old, and finally free too, choose, actually wanted. She wanted to be around people. She wanted conversation and community. She wanted to feel useful. She wanted to matter. Could she have that here? Maybe. Maybe not. But she knew she couldn't have it in an empty house, waiting for phone calls that never came. That evening, she joined the book club meeting. Helen, the woman from dinner, welcomed her warmly. "We're reading The Remains of the Day. Have you read it?" "Years ago." "Perfect. We're discussing memory and regret. Very fitting." They talked for an hour. About the book, about life, about choices made and choices regretted, about what it means to look back on a life and wonder if you did it right. Margaret talked more than she'd talked in months. She felt her mind waking up, engaging. She'd forgotten what it felt like to have a real conversation, to be heard, to be seen as someone with thoughts worth considering. After the meeting, Helen walked with her back to their rooms. "You're not like most new residents. You're not scared. You're not angry. You're just here." "I'm figuring it out." "Good, because this place can be what you make it. Some people give up. They sit in their rooms and wait to die. But some people— Helen smiled. Some people decide to live anyway. Margaret thought about that as she got ready for bed. Living anyway. Despite everything. Despite Linda. Despite being 78. Despite being somewhere she hadn't chosen to be. Living anyway. 3 days passed. Linda didn't call. Emma sent a card, late but sweet. Michael didn't contact her at all. Margaret wasn't surprised. She'd stopped expecting anything from them. But other things happened. She joined the garden club, started helping in the library, made friends with Frank and Helen and George and a half-dozen other residents who were just trying to make the best of things. Rosa stopped by her room every day, not because she had to, just because she wanted to. They talked about Rosa's daughter, who was in middle school, about Rosa's dreams of becoming a nurse practitioner, about life and family and the strange ways people show love. "My mother is in Honduras," Rosa said one day. "I send her money every month. I call her every week, but I haven't seen her in 4 years." "Why not?" "Immigration, money, time, the usual reasons." Rosa smiled sadly. "I tell myself I'll visit next year. I always tell myself next year." "Don't wait too long," Margaret said quietly. "Next year has a way of never coming." On the 7th day, Linda finally called. "Mom, hi. Sorry I haven't called sooner. It's been crazy at work. How are you doing?" "I'm fine." "That's great. That's really great. Are you settling in, making friends?" "Yes." "Good. That's what I hoped. See, I told you this would be better. You're not alone anymore." Margaret didn't respond. Linda filled the silence with chatter about work, about Emma's applications, about Michael's new girlfriend. She talked for 10 minutes without once asking Margaret a real question, without once pausing to listen. Finally, she wound down. "Anyway, I should go, but I'm glad you're doing well. I'll try to visit soon." "Linda?" "Yes?" "Do you remember putting me here?" A pause. "Of course I remember. It was just last week." "Do you remember what day it was?" Another pause. Longer. It was my birthday." Silence. "You put me in a nursing home on my 78th birthday. You didn't remember. You didn't care. You just wanted me out of the way." "Mom, that's not fair. I was trying to help you." "You were trying to help yourself. You were trying to solve a problem. I was the problem." "That's not true. I love you." "Do you? When was the last time you showed it? When was the last time you visited just because you wanted to see me? When was the last time you called just to talk? Not because you needed something, not because you felt guilty, just because you loved me and wanted to hear my voice?" Linda was quiet. "I've spent 78 years loving you, Linda. I raised you. I supported you. I helped you through every crisis. I gave you everything I had, and you couldn't even remember my birthday." "Mom, I'm sorry. I really am. I've just been so busy." "Everyone's busy, but we make time for what matters, and apparently I don't matter." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Come visit me, not next week, not when it's convenient. Now, today. Come see me and prove that I matter more than your meeting or your errands or whatever else you have planned." Silence. Long, horrible silence. "I can't today. I know. You have something more important. You always do." Margaret hung up. Her hands were shaking now, not from age, from anger, from grief, from the final absolute certainty that her daughter would never change. She sat in her room and cried. Not for long, just long enough to let out the pain she'd been holding in for years, the pain of being invisible, of being unloved, of being reduced to an obligation. When she was done crying, she washed her face and went to find Rosa. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "If someone gave you a house, a beautiful house, fully paid off, worth $1 million, what would you do with it?" Rosa blinked. That's a strange question. Hypothetically, Rosa thought about it. I'd probably sell it, use the money to bring my mother here, to pay for my daughter's college, to finish my degree. She smiled. Why? Just curious. That night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about the will, about the choice she'd made, about the life she had left, and how she wanted to spend it. She thought about Linda, who would inherit almost nothing, who would be shocked and hurt and angry, who would probably contest the will, claim her mother was senile or manipulated. Let her try. She thought about Emma and Michael, who would get their trust funds if they maintained a CE relationship with her, if they actually visited, actually called, actually treated her like a person who mattered. She thought about Rosa, who would inherit a house she couldn't possibly expect, who would probably cry when she found out, who would probably think Margaret was crazy for leaving it to her. But Margaret wasn't crazy. She was finally thinking clearly. Money should go to people who deserve it, who earn it, not through blood, but through love, through showing up, through seeing someone and choosing to care. Linda had made her choice. Now Margaret had made hers. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Linda didn't visit. She called once a week, brief conversations full of excuses and promises. Emma sent another card. Michael still hadn't contacted her at all. But Margaret was okay. Better than okay. She was making a life here. Not the life she'd planned. Not the life she'd wanted. But a life that was hers. She taught a class on financial planning for the other residents. She helped organize a fundraiser for the library. She spent hours in the garden with Frank, talking about baseball and grandchildren and the strange ways life turns out. She was happy, not perfectly happy, not the way she'd been with Thomas, but happy in a quiet, unexpected way, happy in spite of everything. One day, Rosa came to her room looking nervous. "Mrs. Chen, can I talk to you about something?" "Of course." "My daughter, she's having trouble in school, being bullied, and I've been thinking about moving her to a different school, but it's in a better neighborhood, and the rent there is so much higher, and I don't know if I can afford it." Rosa's eyes were wet. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be telling you this. You're a resident. I'm supposed to be taking care of you, not... How much do you need?" "What?" "For the move. For the rent. How much do you need?" "Mrs. Chen, I wasn't asking for money. I would never..." "I know, but I'm offering. How much?" Rosa told her. It was a lot, not a fortune, but a significant amount. Margaret wrote her a check. "Mrs. Chen, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. Consider it a gift from someone who knows what it's like to want the best for your child." Rosa cried. Margaret held her hand and felt something warm spread through her chest. This was what money was for, not to sit in an account waiting to be inherited by someone who didn't deserve it, but to help people who needed it, to make a difference in someone's life. This was power, real power, not the power to punish, the power to help. That night, Margaret called James. "I want to add something to the will." "What's that?" "A fund for Rosa and other nurses like her, people who actually care about the elderly, people who see us as human beings instead of burdens." "How much?" "Another $1 million from the investments." "Margaret, that's a lot of money." "I know, and I want it to go to people who will use it to do good. Can you set it up?" "I can, but that leaves less for the library and the scholarship fund." "They'll still get plenty. This is important to me, James." "All right, I'll draft an amendment." Margaret hung up and felt a deep sense of peace. This was right. This was what Thomas would have wanted, to help people, to make a difference, to leave the world a little better than they'd found it. Linda called the next day. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe I can come visit this weekend. Would that work?" "Why now?" "What do you mean?" "Why are you suddenly able to visit? What changed?" "Nothing changed. I just..." I miss you." Margaret almost laughed. Almost. "You miss me, after 3 weeks of not visiting, after forgetting my birthday, after putting me here without asking. Now you miss me." "Mom, don't be like that. I'm trying—" "What do you want, Linda?" "What?" "You never call just to talk. You never visit just to see me. So what do you want?" Silence. Then, carefully, "I was talking to my financial advisor about estate planning, and I realized we've never really discussed your will. I mean, I assume everything's in order, but—" There it was, the real reason for the call, the sudden interest in visiting. Linda wanted to make sure her inheritance was secure. "My will is in order." "Great, that's great. So everything's still— I mean, we talked about this a few years ago, and you said—" "I said I'd left everything to you." "Yes." Relief flooded Linda's voice. "Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure nothing had changed." "Why would anything change?" "I don't know. I worry sometimes. You're getting older, and I know you meet new people, and sometimes elderly people get taken advantage of." "Are you worried someone's going to manipulate me into changing my will?" No, of course not. I just want to make sure you're protected." "I'm protected, Linda. James Park has been my attorney for 30 years. He's not going to let anyone take advantage of me." "Right, of course. I love you, Mom, and I want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine. Better than fine." They talked for a few more minutes, but Margaret's mind was elsewhere. Linda had shown her hand, the sudden interest in visiting, the concern about the will, the fear that something might have changed. Well, something had changed. Everything had changed. But Linda wouldn't find out until it was too late. Margaret lived at Sunny Meadows for 3 more years. They were good years, not perfect. She still missed Thomas. She still felt the sting of Linda's betrayal. But she built a life. She became the unofficial financial advisor for the residents. She helped Frank's grandson with his college applications. She organized fundraisers and garden parties and book clubs. She made friends, real friends, people who valued her for who she was, not what she could give them. Linda visited twice in those 3 years. Both times she stayed less than an hour. Both times she spent most of the visit on her phone. Both times she left promising to come back soon. She never did. Emma visited once. She was applying to graduate schools. She needed advice. Margaret gave it. Emma left promising to stay in touch. She sent a few texts over the next months, then stopped. Michael never visited at all. But Rosa visited every day. They became close. Margaret met Rosa's daughter, helped her with homework, watched her grow from a struggling middle schooler into a confident high school student. She met Rosa's mother when she finally made it to the United States. She became part of Rosa's family in a way she'd never been part of Linda's. On Margaret's 81st birthday, Rosa brought a cake. Frank and Helen and George and a dozen other residents gathered in the common room. They sang, they laughed, they celebrated. Linda called that evening. "Happy birthday, Mom." "Thank you." "I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Work has been crazy." "It's fine." "Are you doing anything special?" "I had a party with friends." "That's great. That's really great." A pause. "Mom, I've been thinking. Maybe we should talk about your care plan. You're 81 now, and I want to make sure everything's in place. You know, for when I die? For when you need more help. I just want to be prepared." "I'm fine, Linda. When I need more help, the staff here will provide it." "Right, of course, but I'm your daughter. I should be involved in these decisions." "You haven't been involved in any decisions about my life for 3 years. Why start now?" "That's not fair." "It's perfectly fair. You put me here and forgot about me. You visit twice in 3 years. You call once a month if I'm lucky. And now you want to be involved in my care decisions?" "I've been busy." "Everyone's busy, Linda. We've had this conversation. I'm tired of having it." Margaret hung up. Her hands were shaking again. But this time it wasn't from anger. It was from something else, something that felt like freedom. She was 81 years old. She had a will that said exactly what she wanted it to say. She had friends who actually cared about her. She had a life that, while not what she'd planned, was meaningful. And she had made peace with the fact that her daughter would never be the person she'd hoped she would be. That was okay. It had to be okay. Because she couldn't change Linda. She could only change how she responded to Linda. And she had responded, with a will that told the truth, with money that would go to people who deserved it, with a life lived on her own terms, even in a place she hadn't chosen to be. Margaret Chen died 6 months later, peacefully, in her sleep, in room 247 of Sunny Meadows Assisted Living. She was 81 years old. Rosa found her in the morning. She cried. Frank and Helen and George cried. The whole facility mourned her. Linda arrived 3 hours later. She cried too. Whether from grief or guilt or some combination of both, no one could say. The funeral was small. Linda arranged it. Emma and Michael came. Rosa came with her daughter and mother. Frank and Helen and George and a dozen other residents from Sunny Meadows came. James Park came. He sat in the back and watched Linda play the grieving daughter. Watched her accept condolences. Watched her talk about how much she'd loved her mother, how much she'd miss her. After the funeral, he approached her. "Linda, I need to speak with you about your mother's estate." "Of course. When can we meet?" "How about tomorrow? My office, 10 a.m. "I'll be there." Linda arrived at James Park's office at exactly 10 o'clock. She was wearing black. Her eyes were red. She looked like someone who'd lost a parent and was bravely carrying on. James showed her to his office and closed the door. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you. It's been hard, but Mom lived a good life." "She did?" James opened a folder on his desk. "I have your mother's will here. I'm required to read it to you as the primary beneficiary." "Primary beneficiary, right?" Linda's voice was carefully neutral, but James could see the relief in her eyes, the anticipation. $4 million, plus the house, plus everything else. "Actually, I need to correct myself. You're not the primary beneficiary. You are a beneficiary, but not the primary one." Linda's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" "Your mother changed her will 3 years ago, the day you brought her to Sunny Meadows." The color drained from Linda's face. "She what?" "She changed her will. She left you $5,000 in cash and $50,000 in life insurance. $55,000 total." Linda stared at him. "That's not possible. She told me everything was left to me. We talked about it." "You talked about it 3 years ago, before she changed it." "But she can't. She was in a nursing home. She wasn't in her right mind." "She was completely in her right mind. I have documentation from 3 different doctors confirming her mental capacity. She was volunteering, teaching classes, managing her own finances. There's no question of diminished capacity." "Then someone influenced her. Someone at that place manipulated her." "The only people who influenced your mother were you and your family, through your actions, or rather, your lack of actions." James slid a piece of paper across the desk. "She left you a letter. I'm required to give it to you." Linda took the letter with shaking hands. She opened it and read, "Dear Linda, I'm leaving you this letter so you understand why I made the choices I made. You put me in a nursing home on my 78th birthday. You didn't ask. You didn't care. You didn't even remember what day it was. In the 3 years I lived at Sunny Meadows, you visited twice. You called once a month if I was lucky. You treated me like an obligation, like a burden, like something to be managed and then forgotten. I spent 78 years being your mother. I loved you. I supported you. I gave you everything I had. and you couldn't give me an hour of your time, so I'm giving my estate to people who actually showed up, who actually cared, who treated me like a person instead of an inconvenience. Rosa gets the house. The library gets $1 million. The nursing scholarship gets $1 million. Emma and Michael get their trust funds if they maintain a relationship with me. But since I'm dead now, I suppose we'll see if they bothered. You get $55,000. That's more than you gave me in the last 3 years of my life. I hope it was worth it. I hope your busy schedule and your important meetings and your convenient excuses were worth losing $4 million. But more than that, I hope someday you understand that you didn't just lose money. You lost me, and I was worth more than any inheritance. I loved you until the day I died, but I loved myself too, and I deserved better than how you treated me. Goodbye, Linda. Mom. Linda read the letter twice, then a third time. Her hands were shaking. Her face was white. This can't be legal. I'm going to contest it. You can try, but you won't win. Your mother was of sound mind. She had excellent legal counsel. She documented everything, and she left you something, which makes it much harder to claim you were forgotten or overlooked. $55,000 out of $4 million. Yes. Who gets the rest? This Rosa person? Some nurse who manipulated her? Rosa gets the house. She didn't manipulate anyone. She was kind to your mother. She visited her every day. She treated her with dignity and respect, things you apparently couldn't be bothered to do. Linda stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. This is insane. My mother was clearly not in her right mind. Your mother was perfectly sane. She was also done being treated like she didn't matter. James stood up too. You can contest the will if you want. You'll lose, and it will cost you money you apparently need. Or you can accept that your mother made her choice, the same way you made yours. Linda stared at him. What choice did I make? The choice to put your busy life ahead of your mother, the choice to forget her birthday, the choice to visit twice in 3 years, the choice to treat her like an obligation instead of a person. James's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Your mother didn't punish you, Linda. She just stopped rewarding you for treating her badly. Linda left without another word. James watched her go, then pulled out his phone and made a call. Rosa, it's James Park. Can you come by my office? I have something for you. Rosa arrived an hour later, still in her nursing scrubs. She looked nervous. Mr. Park, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Please, sit down. She sat. James slid a set of keys across the desk. These are the keys to Margaret Chen's house. It's yours now. Rosa stared at the keys. I don't understand. Mrs. Chen left you her house in her will. It's worth approximately $1 million. It's paid off. It's yours. Rosa's face went white. That's not possible. Why would she? I was just her nurse. You were her friend. You visited her every day. You cared about her. You saw her. James smiled. She wanted you to have it. She wanted you to have the security she never felt from her own family. Rosa started crying. I can't accept this. It's too much. You can accept it, and you will, because Margaret wanted you to have it, because you earned it, not through blood, but through kindness. Rosa took the keys with shaking hands. I don't know what to say. Say you'll use it well. Say you'll remember her. Say you'll teach your daughter that kindness matters more than blood. I will. I promise. After Rosa left, James sat alone in his office and thought about Margaret Chen, about the woman who'd spent 78 years being kind and generous and putting others first, who'd finally, in the last 3 years of her life, put herself first. She'd died happy, surrounded by people who loved her. Not her blood family, but her chosen family, the people who'd shown up. That was worth more than any inheritance. Linda never contested the will. Maybe she realized she'd lose. Maybe she realized fighting it would just prove her mother's point. Maybe she was too ashamed. Emma and Michael got their trust funds. They'd visited Margaret twice in the last year of her life. It was enough to meet the terms of the will. Whether they'd actually cared or just wanted the money, no one could say. The library built their children's wing. They named it after Margaret Chen. The nursing scholarship helped dozens of students become nurses. Good nurses, the kind who saw their patients as people. Rosa sold the house. She used the money to bring her entire family to the United States, to send her daughter to college, to finish her own degree, to build the life Margaret had wanted for her. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, Rosa would think about the elderly woman in room 247, the woman who'd been forgotten by her own family, but who'd changed Rosa's life forever, the woman who'd taught her that family isn't just blood. It's who shows up, who cares, who sees you. Margaret Chen had been seen. In the end, that was all she'd wanted. And in the end, that was exactly what she got.